So welcome back to the S2B Brand Hospital Health Brief. Here at the S2B Brand Hospital, we specialize in helping nonprofits breathe life back into their organizations in the areas of attention, collaboration, and engagement to drive impact and increase donations. For this series of our Health Brief, we have been sitting down chatting with the lovely Katrina L. Martin of Wild Tax and Advisory Services, where today's discussion is really driven behind data-driven decisions. So quickly, we're going to allow Katrina her time. For those of you who don't already know her, to introduce herself. She is the tax whisperer, so we are in good hands. Katrina, thank you so much for taking the time to meet today. Let the people know who you are, girl.
Thank you, Shantelle. I'm Katrina Martin, owner and founder of Wild Tax and Advisory Service. We're based out of here in Southfield, Michigan, but we work with clients nationwide. I'm a licensed enrolled agent, meaning I'm licensed through the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. As a tax expert, I specialize in all things tax planning, tax representation, tax strategy, tax law. My firm specializes in all things accounting. We're a full service firm, so we do bookkeeping, tax planning, tax strategy, and representing clients that owe the IRS, and we're trying to negotiate better terms for them or get their liens removed and all of those things. So we do all of those things here. But one of the number one services that we offer is business advisory services. So this is how Shantelle and I and Story to Brand came to work together, because we help nonprofits like your organizations to bridge that gap and help understand, make sure your finances are in order so you can get the funding that you need, and make sure that we are here to help and guide you along the way.
So what you're telling the people are that you are important to their ability to be successful, and you're super busy, so don't waste your time. Okay, cool. I got it. They got it. And so given the climate of where we are right now, we got new administration in the office, who is administrating over our country, making changes, changing policies, and all of the policies are going to affect, but not all change is bad for especially nonprofits and those of you who have corporate status. So today's conversation, I think, is not only poignant, but timely when it comes to being able to start strategically planning for now and what the future is going to look like. So when we talk about data-driven decisions, how do you define data-driven decisions, Katrina?
The best way I can define it is using what you have to make a decision on what you need to do. A lot of people, especially when you start off in business, you're going off of gut instincts, or you're thinking that I got a good idea, I think I'm going to run with it. But once you have the data, you should be using that to help guide your decisions. We all think about, people want to predict what's going to happen. We get coaches to help predict our certain behaviors. We get people go to psychics to predict the future. Your data is going to help you best predict your future, because what happened in the past, history tends to repeat itself in certain ways, and certain movements bring about certain results. So you need to be able to look at your data, look at that number to tell you what happened in the past and how you can help use that as a guide to your making your movements for the future. You want to be able to look to see, okay, last year we did these are the things we did. This year we want to do this. So based upon what happened before, these are the things that we're recommended on doing. So a lot of times, like I said, a lot of times in business, when you're starting out, you don't have the data on your own to figure out what to do. That's when you use other organizations' data to help guide you. You know, you want to be able to predict the best way that you're going to be able to be successful. Data helps you do that.
Absolutely. And so also, one of the things that were just coming to mind while you're talking that I feel like it just should be said in this conversation is that being able to do your own analysis and diagnostic of your own organization before you start putting it in front of other people, this is your opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you may not always have the questions or, like the tools to analyze what your organization is doing and how well is doing it in the space. One of the reasons why, again, we started this work together as collaborators is that we noticed that organizations don't do that. And by the time they think about it, they're already trying to call me to do grant writing. They're calling Katrina because they're trying to do something else and someone is requesting their books. And they're like, oh, well, we haven't even thought about it. It's like an afterthought.
Yeah.
And what we want you to do is prepare to really be in the best position where your health of your organization is not only the condition of what you have, but also is can be seen on paper and can be seen physically as your organization being a credible, trusted, organization, or as we like to say here, one that's epic, that's ethical, profitable, informative, and customized in your approach. So therefore, you're getting yourself closer to a yes as opposed to a not, no, or not right now. Here are the few things that, the corporation or the grantors want to see on books, that it's an easy, quick conversation where they don't feel like, oh, I'm not going to come in and do this work for you. You have to be able to do it. So when talking to folks like Katrina, she's going to be able to look at your actual books and see, okay, this is an area you probably should focus on, and understanding that, not everything is going to be perfect because there's no such thing as a perfect organization, but it is an ability to make a decision like, hey, this year we're going to focus on fixing this area. So therefore we can be better in position to take advantage of funding opportunities here and the different various funding opportunities that are coming down the pipe, because all of them are connected to more compliance, more checklists, more things that you're going to have to get done. So it's better to get it done ahead of time than waiting for the 11th hour and trying to rush and stress and run yourself up a wall and closer to the heart attack that is going to happen because of you overwhelming yourself with all of this. So when thinking about that, Katrina, and organizations that may come in various different forms, what's the process of them really coming to you? What should they expect?
I think expecting, I find a lot of times people will hold off on coming to us because they're trying to get ready. I need to get these things in order. Well, if they were in order, you wouldn't need us, right? So come to us as you are, and we'll help you get those things. A lot of times I'll talk to people, tell them, how we're going to help them, and then they'll go try to get these things together before they come back to us. And a lot of times when they come back, they're in the same position that we talked to them before. This is what we're here for. We're here to help you get those things in order. We don't expect you to be shined up and with the bow on top when you arrive. We expect it to be, if you're an organization that's been in operation for a while and you're doing really well, typically you'll have some systems in place and things like that. Do we expect them to be perfect? No. This is what we're coming in to help bring those things into better position where you can have your books ready every month, where your
Mhm.
financial statements are ready to go at any given time, where if you need audited financials, that can happen immediately and not have to do a whole lot of cleanup. But a lot of times people are thinking that they have to be ready to get ready. And it's like, no, just come as you are. We'll help get you there. And then I think a lot of times is people, they're hoping and praying that things just fall into place. And hoping and praying does nothing but hoping and praying, right?
Right.
It's not gonna fix itself. You're gonna actually need experts to go in there and fix it. And if this is not your zone of genius, you're not gonna be able to get it in the right place that you need it to be in. So having the right people, this is all we do. This is what we operate in. All we eat, sleep, breathe this. So if when you think of it as a mess, we think of it, we get in there and we're actually like, no, this just goes here. We're able to move the pieces into the proper place pretty quickly.
Right. Because what you're actually doing when you pay a professional or when you come into a space where there are folks who specialize in their ability, what they're doing is saving you time and money
Yeah.
of you trying to figure this out. I mean, you talk about knocking off 10 years of experience. I mean, in this case, Katrina has over 25 years in this space. Here, our team, we're decades of experience, multiple different decades of experience. And so it's like when you talk to us, these are things we've already went through. We've already seen the mistakes, made them ourselves, and it's been journeys far away. Like we want you to make new mistakes
Hmm.
and help you through the new mistakes because we can tell you about all of the ones that are most common. When
Absolutely.
looking at the other thing, so glad you brought up audited financials because always know that I bring them up. They're on the top of the list of everything I do because it is the way that it's kind of this litmus test of saying if your organization is worth my time or not. When it comes to corporations,
Mhm.
sometimes even applying for grants, they're going to look for audited financials because if you've taken that extra step, you're just knocking off all kind of things on their no list. You're getting yourself closer and closer to the pile of consideration and ultimately closer to that yes. So when thinking about audited financials and even how to use data as a form to prepare internally and prepare for what you're going to present externally. Katrina is your person for audited financials, by the way. So
Absolutely.
make sure you hit up her. Because as you can see, it's a genuine conversation that's really centered around like, hey, there's no judgment here. We want you to do better.
Mhm.
Similar to coming into the brand hospital, it's like you're walking into your doctor's office. You have to tell the truth about what's going on and what their condition is. So therefore, prescription or if you need surgery, it can happen, but it's better to know ahead of time. And so when thinking about data, Katrina, you brought up something earlier about being able to do research on outside entities. That
Mhm.
research is also understanding what type of organizations they fund and what kind of things that they're looking for. So, therefore, you can better prepare yourself for conversations when you come in and you have these conversations with the consultants that you choose. We know there are a million of them out there, but one of the reasons why we work so well together is because we have a heart for change and a heart for being able to help organizations come in and organizations leaders be able to be in a better position to make decisions for their organization while driving their ability to have a return on impact. And so, during this time, I know our next conversation, Katrina, is going to be about audited financials, but we are also in a very particular time of the year because this is time to prepare for taxes
Yeah.
and also preparing for going after that funding that people are looking to prepare for. And again, you mentioned being able to look backwards and project forwards. When
Mhm.
looking backwards and projecting forwards, what kind of areas would you just tell people who are listening right now are like those pinpoint areas, the non-negotiables that they must put their eyes on and
Mhm.
must be in compliance with?
Yeah, I think the biggest things is making sure that you do have your numbers, right? Key financial statements that you're going to look that most organizations are going to look for your income statement or AKA profit and loss statement, what your income is and versus your expenses at any particular time. So right now, most organizations are looking at 2024 numbers, right? How much income did you bring in 2024 and how much were the expenses, right? So what was the net? What did you keep? Also, the one of the key pieces that I find overlooked a lot of times, but is so imperative to any organization and imperative to receiving funding is your balance sheet. What are the assets of the organization and what are the liabilities to the organization? What do you own? What do you owe? Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times people, that always gets pushed to the wayside because people are typically thinking profit and loss. But organizations that want to lend you money need to know who the key stakeholders are on that balance sheet. What's coming in? What's the depreciation schedule look like? What of the investors? Who are the investors and what do you owe them?
Hmm.
What are the credit card balances? All of those things live on the balance sheet, right? The profit and loss just talks about income, expenses. The balance sheet talks about assets and liabilities. The organizations that are going to give you money, they want to know that that's imperative to what they're going to have. So that's part of one of the key parts to the audited financials. And then your cash flow summary. And then the purpose of the organization is really important as well. So when you're going out to organizations, they're going to want to know what was your purpose in funding this organization? Who are your key stakeholders in the organization? Who's on your board? Some of the things that a lot of times people get looked over for is just because they don't have all of their things buttoned up. And a lot of times I think about this analogy all the time. I watch Shark Tank like most people do in business.
Yeah.
And thinking about those questions that they ask those people on there, those are the questions that you're going to get as an organization. They want to know what your numbers are. They want to know who are the investors. They want to know what your expected growth, what your projections are for the future. How much did you make last year? How much are you projected to make this year in the next 5 years? You need to know those numbers, and the only way you can do that is by having the data in place where we can use those numbers to do projections.
Absolutely. And so, with that, one of the things that I just came in my mind too is that um, being realistic, it's understanding your numbers, but the real numbers are going to allow your organization to be realistic. Quite often, people, again, when looking for funding, they want to go after 100,000, 200,000, $1 million for the organization. When meanwhile, when outside organizations or the funders, they don't want to really give you more than 20% of your overall annual budget. And so being able to be very precise about the number that you're asking, because they don't want to feel like they're the only funders that are helping you do this. All
Mhm.
right. And so to Katrina's point, having audited financials is a just tool for your organization internally, externally. It just that litmus test of again checking all of those things off of just knowing for sure the numbers that are coming out your mouth are accurate, and it lets them know that, hey, if they wanted to do more, they could. And
Mhm.
you'll be a great partner because great partnerships are, full of transparency, communication, and trust. And if you're leading out your conversation with trust by laying it all out, I mean, you are a nonprofit, and nonprofits, by definition, everything is public record anyway. Now, do you have to tell them from your projected, annual revenue, it's projected, right? But to Katrina's point, those profit and loss statements and at the balance sheet, those are power moves for your organization to have. So, Katrina, when looking at the level of organizations, remember our level 1, 2, and 3, level 1 being those that are 250,000 or less, level 2 being 300,000 or 500,000, and level 3 being 500,000, 5,500 or 550 plus.
Mhm.
Um, when looking at that, what would you say is the most ideal organization that you work with, and the time factor that's attached to the work that you have to get done, along with those who are just kind of startups, that level 2 and 3, which most people here will probably be at that level of
Mhm.
understanding what should they expect as far as investment of their time, their money, and type of energy that needs to go into their work.
Yeah, I think for level the 550 and above, typically they've got the systems in place. They typically, don't get me wrong, sometimes we just have somebody that had a sometimes we just have somebody that had an influx of capital, right? But they hadn't really got their feet wet yet. But typically what we see is those people typically have their systems in place, their team in place. It runs pretty smooth. They've got their books in order. They typically know who's responsible for what. Is it always like that? Not necessarily, but typically those are the cases of why you are able to see those higher numbers, because you've got systems and people to make sure things happen how they're supposed to. The level 1 and level 2 are typically in the startup phase. So it's usually a solopreneur at that point, or one or two people that are making everything happen. What happens in that is a slower growth period because you're wearing so many hats, right? And you're trying to be a specialist in all of these key areas. And so things tend to fall to the wayside. And usually it's the back end system, it's the accounting system that usually falls to the wayside, because
Mhm.
usually you're trying to deal with the front of the house. So the back of the house usually falls to the wayside. And that's where you mess up your opportunities for getting additional funding, because you don't have your books ready when it's time to go for those to go for grants. And it just we just got to be transparent. There's a timeline on those. Everything has a deadline on it, and you have to stay ready so you don't have to get ready to meet those deadlines. And a lot of times those organizations miss those opportunities because they don't have their systems in place or their numbers ready to go when those opportunities present themselves, right? Or they're
Mhm.
overreaching because of where they're currently at. Like you said, the 20% rule, where a lot of times they're asking for that organization to fund their whole organization, and they're just not going to do that because you haven't proven yourself yet, and there needs to be ROI on everything for the back end. They can't even substantiate lending those greater numbers at that point because you haven't proven yourself yet. But part of
Correct.
proving yourself is being ready all the time to go after those opportunities. And sometimes you go after the smaller opportunities to get you to the bigger ones. So, but you have to have your systems in place to make sure that happens. And like I say, operating your zone of genius. If your zone of genius is going out getting funding or going out making sure whatever the organization's primary purpose is happens, those other key areas like the accounting space, like the financial space, hire professionals that know how to do that so you'll always be ready.
Absolutely. And to your point, when breaking down some of the numbers that these corporations are going to be asking for when start applying for funds, when looking at your budget, they want to see itemized list. And
Mm-hmm.
what the thing that's unique about nonprofits is that they're looking at operations, but they're also looking at your programs because in most cases, your funding is most likely going to come through your programs, not operations. They're not trying to pay your staff and do all of that portion unless it's, really substantiated through having a building and you've had growth margins that are out of the wazoo. They'll do it then. But
Mm-hmm.
your better chance is to go after programmatic, funding. And so when looking at that, this is where, to Katrina's point, it's going to be important to understand your FTEs and your PTEs, understanding who is considered full-time equivalent, part-time equivalent, and being able to break those numbers down because that's what they're looking for. They are looking for that because that's sometimes the way people are swooping in their operations numbers of trying to pay, some of their directors from operations and putting them in under program director and actually trying to translate the salary that way as opposed to getting it done in the matter of the program itself. It's a great tool, but only a percentage should go in actually the program. And knowing that is going to be monumental for even when you're coming and broaching a conversation with Katrina and her team. Understanding those numbers is going to help them better understand where you are and help them project what the future can look like and how quickly you can get this done. That's what funders are looking for as well. Because what they're actually want to answer the question to, if you have a meeting with them, they probably already possibly made a decision that they're going to support you. Now they're trying to understand how long they're going to be able to do it. Because for them, if you become a easy conversation, an easy win for them, they're going to like, oh, we can do this for the next 3 to 5 years, or however, how long you have projected in your vision and cost that you would need our support. So two things are happening while you're having these conversations. It's not just relieving the stress of the present, but also preparing for what the future can look like based on your numbers. And so, Katrina, one other thing, well, two other things before we get out of here. So, when looking at the conversation I just had about the FTEs and understanding how do you go about doing that, I know, you're getting phone calls all the time with people at the end of the year, it's tax season. So,
Mm-hmm.
they got to get those 1099s, those W-2s out, understanding how that plays a role and how those data points can even just set up the organization for making better future decisions for new programs this year. And then the secondary part of understanding, how would they go about preparing for a phone call with you? What is the first step that they'll have to get done, and getting in the right mindset of what they should be preparing for now.
Absolutely. No, great question, Shantelle. I think the great question about the employees versus contractors and all of those things too. And not being too top heavy. All the money shouldn't be going out into full-time. Every dollar shouldn't be going to staffing, right? It does need to go back into these programs. Your mission statement really is important. Your visions are really important, and understanding why your organization is in operation and why they're going to donate to you. What's the goal behind that? And understanding, just making sure that you have the back end stuff in place, right? If you're
Yep.
as an employee versus a contractor, right? What documentation do you need for an employee versus a contractor? We're having these conversations because deadlines are happening, and if you're missing those deadlines, there's penalties associated with them as well, right? So I've
Yep.
been getting a lot of calls lately, like, hey, we need to get our W-2s out, we need to get our 1099s out. It's like, we should have had those out by January. Those need to be postmarked by January 31st. And it's like,
Right.
you have your W-4s for your employees, and do you have your W-9s for your contractors? What are those? Those are things that you have people fill out the minute you decide to hire them, not even after you've made a payment to them, the minute you decide to hire them. Because when it's time to start reporting that information, that's the information that we need to have to provide the payee information or then contractor information, right? And those are things that you're also going to want to have in your organization to show that you're buttoned up to these organizations. These are the number of employees we have. These are the number of contractors we have. These are the number of volunteers we have. And so just aligning all of those things, this makes you look so attractive to a funder because it's like they've got all their I's dotted and T's crossed, right? So that is
Absolutely.
really, really important to have in place at the very start. And the second question, How do you get in contact with me? So we're across all social channels. We're Wild Tax and Advisory Service. But if you want to reach out to me, I'm Katrina the Advisor on YouTube. And inside of my description on each post, there's a link to book a chat with me and my team. So feel free to use that. And what you need to have to start working with us, come as you are, because a lot of times people think that they gotta get all the things in order to come to us. But if you had all the things in order, you wouldn't need to work with us, right? So
Absolutely.
come as you are. Don't worry about trying to, I need to get my books in order before. This is what we're here for. So come as you are. Just come, be prepared to be transparent about what you have going on. I've heard it all. I've seen it all. Nothing surprises me. Usually people are shocked because they're so stressed when they're talking to me, and I'm this same calm. And so they're like, "You're not panicked?" I'm like, "No, this everything's solvable." Nothing, even if it
Yeah.
burns down, we can fix it, so
Not new to this, true to
not
this.
new,
We can help you out.
so don't try to put lipstick on the pig, as they say, to come to us. Just come as you are. We'll take it. We're here to help. This is what we specialize in. We don't do, find a lot of times most people are we have this accounting firm, we have the shoe shine business, we have this accounting firm. This is what we specialize in. This is all that we do. This is our specialty. So come as you are, and we'll make sure that you're good.
Perfect. And so for our next conversation, we will be talking about audited financials. So prepare your books, your pens, and your minds. Get them ready because Katrina is going to be dropping all of the knowledge. I'm going to be talking about the process of why and how it's important to have your audited financials for the process as a nonprofit, a grant writer, and also helping through the strategies of preparing for writing your programs, going after funding. How do you go about building out the team that's around there? I love what Katrina says, the circle, your zone of genius. We call it your circle of influence,
Yeah.
where everyone is going to bring their zone of genius inside of it. So just have a power conversation where you are not, as a leader, taking on all of these hats and putting yourself in a position where you're heading to a heart attack early in life. We want you to breathe life back into your organization in the various areas that are required to help you build up that attention, get your collaborations, and get those engagements running. So your organization can actually actively be in a space where you can be epic in the things that you do because you're being ethical, profitable, informative, and customizing your work. And that is the end of today's health brief. Thank you so much, Katrina. If you all have any questions that you want to really ask us after this time, I'll be sure to provide the links to set up free consults so you can have your questions answered and we can go from there.
Sounds good.
All right, I'll see you all next time. And Katrina, thank you always for
Thank you,
dropping all these gems, Miss Tax Whisperer herself.
Shantelle.